Welcome to Asia Outlook. I'm Melody and I'm here to report the top stories from around Asia. Tokyo 2020 was postponed in March as COVID-19 spread across the globe, marking the worst disruption to the Olympics since 2 editions were cancelled during World War II. But as infections keep rising in the capital and around the world, locals said that it's still too soon. CGTN Grace Lee has more from Tokyo.
It turns out most people here in Japan don't think the Olympics should go ahead. As indicated by an earlier poll last month as well, about 25% of the correspondents thought that it should be pushed back. Most thought that it should be canceled altogether. Only a small, about 25% of them thought that it should go ahead next year as planned. So it does point to the fact that a lot of people here are feeling uneasy about this second wave that we're seeing consistently. We're seeing records broken in Tokyo, in Osaka, and nationwide for new COVID-19 cases. And it seems that there's not much being put in place at this time from the central government to curb those cases at this time. So residents here are feeling very uneasy.
Thailand's labor minister announced his resignation on Monday, becoming the 6th cabinet member to step down since late last week. A major reshuffle is expected in the next few weeks to fill the vacancies, but the turbulence reflects internal conflicts in the ruling coalition. CGTN Tony Chang has more from Bangkok.
Offering prayers to the gods at an altar atop Bangkok's government house. But this was the last acting government for 4 cabinet ministers who resigned together last week. Since then, 2 more have handed in their notice. At a time when Thailand's facing a potentially devastating economic slowdown because of the coronavirus crisis, the guardians of the economy have stepped down. But they said it was time for new faces and new challenges.
We, the financial team, and the Deputy Prime Minister Somkit Jatusipitak, who has also submitted his resignation due to his health condition, have resigned so that we can get some rest.
The man who appears to be behind the resignations is General Prawit, Deputy PM and one of the orchestrators of the 2014 coup. Although he's always been considered a powerhouse behind the scenes, he recently stepped up to lead the main coalition party.
But now that Prawit is in charge of the party, there's a lot of internal turmoil because now there's a lot of jockeying for power, for portfolios. And it will be up to Prawit and Prayut, the Prime Minister, to kind of keep a lid on this turmoil.
But while the former coup-leading generals may have cemented their power at the top, a cabinet reshuffle is unlikely to make things any easier.
At this time, the government is very much on its way down. It's lost credibility, it's lost momentum. After the election, 1 year now, the government is in power. So, going forward, I think it will come under pressure.
And that pressure isn't only going to come from within. This weekend saw the first mass street protests in Thailand since the coup. The protesters, students and young professionals, say the coup and the flawed election that followed have robbed them of their future. With rising unemployment, falling exports and the worst performing economy in Southeast Asia, their voices are only going to get louder. Internal feuding in the ruling coalition and protesters once again back on the streets of Bangkok. The Thai government has been praised for its success in dealing with COVID-19, but now that life has got back to normal, the real problems have returned. Tony Cheng, CGTN, Bangkok.
Heavy monsoon rains continue to hit South Asia. Floods and landslides have killed over 100 people in India. In the country's east, at least 9 rivers has risen above danger levels, inundating many villages. Bangladeshi officials say nearly 70 people have died and that 1/3 of the country is now underwater. At least 2.6 million people have been affected. In Nepal, 132 people have died, while 53 are missing after floods and landslides. Eel dishes are becoming more popular among Japanese consumers as the prices drop. Summer is the best time to enjoy eel dishes, and it is a tradition for Japanese food lovers to treat themselves with eels. With fewer international travelers coming for fresh eels due to COVID-19, eel products are cheaper for local people, dropping by around 10%. Shopping malls and supermarkets have prepared all kinds of eel dishes, looking to attract consumers keen to eat pre-cooked eel dishes at home amid the novel coronavirus epidemic.
なかなか上の階はなかなかね、まだまだ厳しいような状況は聞いておりますけれども、やはりそのようなこの地下の食品フロアで盛り上げていって、上の方に少しでもお客様に流れていただければなという思いで頑張っていきたいと思います。
A Chinese-made vaccine against the coronavirus has begun the final stage of testing in Brazil. Volunteers received the first doses of what officials hope will be a game changer in the pandemic. CGTN Paulo Cabral has more from Sao Paulo.
The vaccine was developed by Chinese laboratory Sinovac, and the trials here in Brazil happen in partnership with the Butantan Institute, a local laboratory and vaccine maker. The first volunteers took their shots here in the Hospital das Clínicas, the Clínicas Hospital here in São Paulo, one of the main references in the state and in the country for COVID-19. On this first phase of the trials, 900 volunteers will take the vaccine. A total of 9,000 volunteers are expected to be vaccinated, to take their shots during the whole phase 3 testing. As it happens in this kind of trials, half of them will take the actual vaccine and the other half will have a placebo. The governor of São Paulo, João Dória Jr., said that these trials have to do with a partnership that has been developing since last year between the state of São Paulo and China.
Abrimos o primeiro escritório internacional de São Paulo.
China is the main commercial partner of Sao Paulo. That's why in August last year, we opened the first international office of our state in China, in the city of Shanghai. And it was during that commercial admission to China that Sao Paulo's Butantan Institute signed its first agreement with Sinovac, creating the grounds for what's happening now.
If trials are successful, the agreement between the state of São Paulo and China also provides for the local production of the vaccine here in Brazil in the Butantan Institute. Hopes are that the trials will be finished by the end of the year, and then, if successful, the vaccine could start to be distributed to the general population in early 2021. Brazil is one of the worst hit countries by COVID-19. 2 million cases, more than 2 million cases confirmed so far, second only to the United States. And this is the key reason why this country is being considered an important testing ground for vaccines. Sinovac is testing their vaccine right now here, but also there are others being also on trial here in Brazil. A vaccine developed by the British University of Oxford in partnership with pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca is also being tested here in Brazil. And this Tuesday, Brazil's Public Health Agency has just given authorization also for pharmaceutical company Pfizer to test their vaccines also here in Brazil. Paulo Cabral for CGTN from São Paulo.
Director General of World Health Organization on Thursday refuted U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's accusation that he had been bought by China. He stressed the sole role of WHO is to save lives. Let's take a look.
We think that the entire world needs to work together to ensure that every country, including China, behaves in the international system in ways that are appropriate and consistent with the international order. You can't engage in cover-ups and co-opt international institutions like the World Health Organization.
The comments are untrue and unacceptable, and without any foundation for that matter. And our sole focus and the focus of the entire organization is on saving lives. If there is one thing that really matters to us and which should matter to the entire international community, it's saving lives. And WHO will not be distracted by these comments.
A hot air balloon festival that was canceled due to the coronavirus pandemic has finally taken place in Russia. The 4-day event includes 7 balloon flights in 2 towns along the so-called Golden Ring of Russia. Stay with us as we bring you more news on Asia Outlook. In Japan, the government has launched a controversial campaign to boost the domestic tourism sector that's hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The scheme, called Go to Travel, allows domestic travelers to apply for discounts on transport and accommodation. Tokyo is excluded from the campaign due to the rising number of COVID-19 cases in the city. Many Tokyo residents have voiced concern over the campaign, saying the launch is inappropriate. CGTN Grace Lee has more details from Tokyo.
Announced another change, saying that it would compensate Tokyo travelers who are hoping to take advantage of this campaign, and yet were recently announced that Tokyo would be excluded from this travel campaign. So a lot of people here in Tokyo are not happy, but at least they'll be getting their refunds. Meanwhile, in other parts of Japan, it seems that travelers are keen to take advantage because they'll get half off of all of their travel costs. But at the same time, the majority of the public here has deemed that it was inappropriate for the government to push ahead with such a plan, as we see the number of COVID cases rise, not only here in Tokyo, but other parts of Japan where we hadn't seen coronavirus cases for a very long time. Especially in Osaka, those residents are still able and eligible to apply for this plan, even as they see record numbers of cases. Now, experts are worried that people in places like Osaka, other urban cities, will take the virus and bring it to rural areas where they don't have the necessary personnel or the equipment to deal with coronavirus. And so that's a major concern as the government pushes ahead with domestic travel plans. And that's specifically because because of Japan's travel ban on all other countries that we're seeing, 120 or so. So they're seeing a decrease in foreign tourists. They want to boost that up with domestic tourists, but so far it's proving to be a very unpopular plan.
According to results announced on Tuesday in Syria, the ruling Ba'ath Party and its allies have won a majority in parliamentary elections. More than 7,000 polling stations opened Sunday last week across government-held areas of the country. But millions of Syrians who fled the ongoing civil war in the country were ineligible to vote. Concerns over the coronavirus also affected turnout. Activists and the political opposition in exile derided the poll, labeling it a farce. Washington dismissed it as a stage-managed and unfree. Chinese President Xi Jinping, also General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, on Tuesday expressed his gratitude to state-owned private and foreign-funded enterprises, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan funded companies, and the self-employed businesses for their contributions to pandemic prevention and control and socioeconomic progress. President Xi made the remarks while presiding over a symposium with entrepreneurs in Beijing. Let's take a listen.
借此机会，我向广大国有企业、民营企业、外资企业、港澳台资企业、个体工商户为疫情防控和经济社会发展做出的贡献，表示衷心的感谢。
According to the United Nations, the pandemic is pushing populations around the world deeper into a hunger crisis. A new report says up to 132 million more people may be left hungry by the end of the year, as lockdowns hamper food access, especially in countries already struggling to feed themselves. CGTN Li Ling Tang has more information from New York.
For 50-year-old Carlos Macias, it has been a struggle to put food on the table. He lives in Caracas, Venezuela, a country gripped by economic crisis.
We limit the things we buy, especially in personal care products, because you have to choose if you need to buy toothpaste or rice. If I don't have enough to eat, what should I buy, toothpaste or rice?
Sometimes forced to eat only one meal a day, COVID-19 has made the situation much worse for his family.
I was working as a carpenter, but now I'm not working because people aren't hiring. Some people are scared somebody will infect them with the virus, and others don't have money to pay.
The virus means that millions more people around the world now have to choose between food and other basic needs for themselves and their children.
If we look at the COVID-19 effects, our estimations are that we will be between 83 and 132 million people going into undernourishment in addition to what we have today.
That's in addition to the estimated 690 million people who went hungry last year as a result of poverty, protracted conflicts, and extreme weather patterns. That means that by the end of the year, when the impact of the pandemic on economies can be better quantified, 1 in 10 people around the world would be hungry. But the problem isn't because there isn't enough food to go around. It's the lockdowns and the closures of businesses and schools and the impact of the global recession. The International Monetary Fund expects global growth to contract by 4.9% this year.
The effect of the recession is huge, and that affects food access. So food is available. We have food available in the world right now. What we don't have is capacity to buy food.
Mobility restrictions and disrupted food supply systems make food less available and accessible for many people.
The pandemic has laid bare the inequalities faced by vulnerable populations, especially in regions where economic and social safety nets are lacking, including for children.
There are lots of closures and mobility restrictions due to COVID, but the biggest impact was really the overall universal almost closure of schools, and that really impacts children who rely on school meals for their nutrition.
In a year that's also experiencing other outbreaks like Ebola and African swine fever, as well as locust swarms across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, the fear is that COVID-19 could thrust the world deeper into a hunger crisis from which it cannot fully and quickly recover.
We're already facing hunger. What's coming next is starvation, because when the second COVID-19 wave arrives, there won't be enough food.
I'm Li Ling Tan for CGTN, New York.
Carrie Symonds, the fiancée of UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, has urged retailers to stop stocking on Thai coconut products that use monkey labor. Her comments come after an investigation by an animal rights group into the use of macaque monkeys on coconut farms. CGTN Tony Cheng has more.
The lush green coconut groves of southern Thailand, stretched out as far as the eye can see. Under the canopy, Nirun is setting off to work with his monkeys. With a few words of encouragement, he sends them up the trunk to the fruit that hangs at the top of the tree. These monkeys have been trained. They recognize the color of a ripe fruit and leave the rest. Using their hands and feet, they spin the nuts to break the vine, and the coconut drops to the forest floor, far quicker than any human could. The monkeys are roped throughout. Nirun freely admits they would run away otherwise. But it also looks like the working relationship of man and beast. And at the end, both get their reward. Nirun says this is far from animal abuse.
They don't understand how we live as monkeys. They've never seen the farmers and monkeys living together. And we've had this bond for more than 100 years.
But PETA, the animal rights organization that wants the working monkeys banned, says it has strong evidence of abuse, and that exported coconut products should come from human hand alone. Their campaign has already seen 15,000 retailers reject Thai coconut products, and they say if things don't change, more will follow.
Quite simply put, consumers are going to buy their coconuts from other countries, or coconut products from other countries. They're not going to look at Thailand. The Thai government and the coconut industry there take no action.
Thailand is the 6th largest exporter of coconuts in the world, and the government claims that monkeys are only involved in a fraction of their production.
Even all the monkeys in the entire forest won't be enough for the industry because we export hundreds of thousands of coconuts each year.
And there are alternatives that the big coconut growers are starting to employ. And this is one of the answers to monkey involvement in the coconut industry, which is to use a genetically modified dwarf coconut, where the fruit is close to the ground and can be picked by hand. The problem with that is these trees take 7 years to reach maturity, and for all of that time, the farmer has no income. Back in his coconut grove, it's time for Nirun to get to work, as the monkeys look on. It's a way of life he's loath to change.
I feel sad because I've never tortured them. The only thing I've ever done is give them love.
But as consumers turn their backs on monkey-plucked coconuts, man and monkey may have reached the end of the road. Tony Cheng, CGTN, Suratani, Southern Thailand.
According to Airbus, SpaceX successfully launched South Korea's first military communications satellite into space on Monday. Built by Airbus Space and Defense, the satellite will provide secure communications over a wide coverage.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
M1 propulsion is nominal.
Plus 40 seconds. Everything looking good? That's the call out. Says M1D engines are throttling down, getting ready to reduce vehicle acceleration in preparation for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the bottom of the throttle bucket, as they call it. Now the Merlin engine's coming back up to full power as we get ready to go supersonic. Supersonic, we're coming through the period of maximum dynamic pressure.
Vehicle has reached maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Guidance engineer confirms we're through the period of greatest pressure on the vehicle. Continuing downrange, trajectory looks good, propulsion looks good, avionics looks good.
China has donated a new batch of medical supplies to Zimbabwe to help the African country fight the COVID-19 pandemic. It includes surgical masks, medical gloves, PPEs, and testing kits. The supplies were handed over to Zimbabwe authorities during a ceremony held at the presidential palace in Harare. Zimbabwe President Emmerson Mnangagwa and the Chinese ambassador to Zimbabwe, Guang Xiaochun, were present at the event.
This
This timely gift from your government and people, as well as the Communist Party of China, to us is certainly a huge contribution whose impact will go a long way to mitigate the suffering amongst our people and boost our capacity for disease prevention. Our relationship with the People's Republic of China, which is historical, which has stood time, has come to our rescue. You have sent us equipment from the time when the pandemic reached this country. You have sent us medical experts to come and share their experiences and competencies with our people, our medical doctors here. We shall remain grateful for that.
The unity between China and Zimbabwe in the fight against the pandemic has once again demonstrated that our friendship is unbreakable and that no challenge can stop us from helping each other. Under the leadership of President Mnangagwa, Zimbabwe has shown political commitment and fine judgment since the virus emerged here in March. Now we are entering a new phase in this fight as the community transmission picks up. We are alert but not deterred because we have seen firsthand the grit of Zimbabwe and because China is determined to stick with you.
A popular amusement park known as Dream Island reopened its door in Moscow on Saturday for the first time since the coronavirus lockdown was enforced across the country in March. Hundreds of visitors waited with their children to enter the recently built indoor amusement park. Dream Island had to close due to the pandemic a month after Russian President Vladimir Putin officially opened it. Moscow has already lifted most of its coronavirus restrictions. Amusement parks were allowed to reopen on the 13th of July. Moscow's mayor Sergei Sobyanin wrote on his blog, however, the number of visitors cannot exceed 50% of its maximum capacity. There are more news coming on Asia Outlook, so make sure you stick around. The COVID-19 epidemic continues to spread in Japan. AKB48 announced on its official website on Monday that its 23-year-old Team B member, Takita Kayoko, has tested positive for coronavirus. At present, her symptoms are mild and likely to be hospitalized. She is the first COVID-19 confirmed case of the group. Takita Kayoko was in contact with another Team 4 member, Tatsuya Makiho, on the July 2nd. Since she did not visit the office and the AKB48 theater, other idols' activities and schedules remained unchanged. The South Korean economy plunged into recession in the second quarter in its worst decline in more than 2 decades, as the coronavirus pandemic battered exports and social distancing curbs paralyzed factory output. Asia's fourth largest economy shrank by a seasonally adjusted 3.3% in the June quarter from 3 months earlier, the Bank of Korea stated on Thursday. That is the sharpest contraction since the first quarter of 1998 and steeper than the 2.3% contraction seen in Reuters poll. For the whole of 2020, analysts see the economy declining by a median of 0.4%, which will be the first and the largest contraction since 1998. But the International Monetary Fund estimates an even bigger 2.1% contraction. And that's all we have for today's Asia Outlook on MI Radio. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back next week. Until next time.